Right now, you are forming an opinion. Maybe about politics, maybe about the economy, maybe about a person you've never met, a policy you've never read, a crisis happening somewhere you've never been. You believe this opinion is yours, the product of your experiences, your reading, your independent thinking. But what if the information that built that opinion, the articles, the headlines, the platforms, the conversations, the ideas floating in the background of your daily life, what if all of that was quietly, systematically shaped before it ever reached you? Not by a government, not by a shadowy conspiracy, by a handful of individuals richer than most countries on Earth. This is not a theory. This is a documented, peer-reviewed, measurable reality. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never consume information the same way again. Let's begin with a number. As of 2024, the world's billionaires collectively control over $16 trillion in wealth. That number is almost impossible to imagine. But what matters is not what they spend it on for themselves. What matters is what they spend it on for you. Because the most sophisticated tool of power in the modern age is not an army. It is not a government. It is the ability to determine what you think is normal, what you believe is possible, and what questions you never think to ask. Sociologists have a name for this. It is called agenda setting. And for the better part of a century, academic research has confirmed that mass media does not tell people what to think. It tells people what to think about. Control the agenda, and you shape the culture without ever issuing a single direct command. Billionaires have figured this out, and they have built the infrastructure to do it at industrial scale. The first layer is the most visible, though most people still don't fully register its significance. Today, the richest man on Earth owns X, formerly Twitter, the platform where political discourse happens in real time, where journalists break stories, where governments make announcements. The family of the second wealthiest person in the world owns Paramount, which owns CBS, and is positioned to acquire Warner Brothers. Discovery, the parent company of CNN. The third richest man controls Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The fourth richest owns The Washington Post and Amazon MGM Studios. Another billionaire controls Fox News, The Wall Street Journal, and The New York Post. Stop and sit with that for a moment. 5 individuals, 5 of the wealthiest people alive. Between them, they influence or directly control the information diet of hundreds of millions of people every single day. And this is not accidental. Research published in the Journal of Politics found that billionaire media ownership produces measurable electoral influence. A study of Israel documented how one billionaire's free newspaper, launched in 2007, shifted national political outcomes, directly benefiting specific candidates and fundamentally altering the country's political landscape. The researchers concluded that the ultra-rich can exert immense impact in reshaping politics simply through controlling the media people consume. The mechanism is subtle. It does not require editors to be told what to say. It works through what is emphasized and what is ignored, what gets covered and what disappears, which stories stay on the front page and which fade in hours. In early 2025, the Washington Post's opinion editor resigned after the paper's owner, Jeff Bezos, mandated the editorial section shift its focus toward content supporting personal liberties and free markets. The previous year, the paper quietly ended its decades-long precedent of endorsing presidential candidates, a decision that triggered mass subscriber cancellations and a public outcry. No editorial policy was announced. No press conference was held. The change simply happened because the owner decided it would. This is how modern media power works, not with a hammer, with a thermostat, slowly, quietly, adjusting the temperature of what you read until the climate feels natural. But media ownership is only the first layer. The second is older, deeper, and far less visible. It operates through a web of think tanks, academic institutions, foundations, and advocacy organizations, all of which appear Independent, all of which are branded as neutral experts, and all of which are funded in whole or in significant part by the very billionaires whose interests they happen to advance. Investigative journalist Jane Meyer spent years documenting this system for her landmark book, Dark Money. What she found was a blueprint, a deliberate, decades-long project by a network of ultra-wealthy families to reshape American political thought from the inside out. The strategy was elegant. Because libertarian and deregulatory ideas were unpopular with voters when put to a direct vote, the solution was to change the intellectual environment in which those votes were cast. If you could fund the universities that trained the economists, the think tanks that briefed the lawmakers, the foundations that shaped the nonprofits, the media groups that framed the debates, you didn't need to win arguments in public. You had already won them in private, before the public conversation even began. These organizations were given names that sounded like civic institutions. Americans for Prosperity, the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute. Their funding sources were obscured through layers of donor-advised funds and dark money channels, structures that are technically legal, deliberately opaque, and virtually impossible to trace without years of investigative reporting. A 2023 assessment by the Quincy Institute found that less than 30% of think tank-affiliated witnesses who testify before the U.S. Congress disclose who funds them. These are the experts shaping law, writing policy, defining the boundaries of what is considered reasonable in a democracy. And the people paying for that expertise are largely invisible. One survey found that only 20% of Americans trust what think tanks say. People sense something is wrong. They just cannot name what. The third layer is the newest, and it is, arguably, the most powerful of all. Social media platforms are not neutral pipes through which information flows. They are editorial systems. Every post you see, every video that appears in your feed, every trending topic, these are the outputs of algorithms. And those algorithms are built and owned by private individuals whose values, interests, and worldviews are baked into their architecture. When a platform owner decides to amplify certain political content, to suppress opposing viewpoints, or to remove a channel without explanation, there is no regulatory body with clear authority to intervene. There is no editorial board to appeal to. There is no journalist to call. There is just one person in one boardroom making a choice that affects the information environment of billions of people simultaneously. Research from digital communication studies has shown that social media platforms can create what researchers call artificial consensus, the illusion that a particular view is widely held, when in reality it has been algorithmically amplified. The result is a public that forms opinions based on a curated reality it has no way to detect. Unlike newspapers, which at least carry bylines and disclosure policies, the algorithm is invisible. You cannot read it. You cannot audit it. You can only experience its effects, never its logic. And unlike traditional campaign contributions, which are regulated and reported, the political influence of a platform owner requires no disclosure at all. They are shaping public opinion at a scale no politician, no television network, no newspaper in history has ever achieved, with none of the accountability that came with those older forms of power. Now step back, because this story is older than Silicon Valley. The concentration of media and narrative power in the hands of the very wealthy is not a modern invention. In the early 20th century, newspaper barons wielded cultural and political power that shaped entire governments. In Britain, the question of who the influential press would support was treated as a matter of genuine national consequence. When one major paper switched allegiances and it aligned with the election result, the headline practically wrote itself. The press knew exactly what it was doing. What has changed is scale, speed, and invisibility. The mechanisms of influence have become simultaneously more powerful and less transparent. The internet, once believed to be the great democratizer of information, has instead migrated the media monopoly into digital space. Research by FAIR, the media watchdog organization, documented what Ben Bagdikian had originally described in print decades ago. The consolidation of media power into fewer and fewer hands has not been disrupted by the digital age. It has been accelerated by it. So what does this mean for you right now in your daily life? It means the opinion you formed this morning about a politician, about an economic policy, about what is fair and what is not, was shaped by an information environment you did not choose and cannot fully see. The think tank expert quoted in the article you read may have been funded by interests that benefit directly from your agreeing with them. The platform that showed you that video may have been prioritizing content that serves the platform owner's political preferences. The newspaper that did not cover a certain story may have been protecting its owner's business relationships. None of this is a conspiracy. Conspiracies are secret. Most of this is documented, disclosed in fragments, or sitting in plain sight in ownership disclosures that almost no one reads. The problem is not that it is hidden. The problem is that it is normalized. We have come to accept as natural a system of information that was carefully constructed to serve specific interests. And that acceptance is itself the most powerful outcome the system could hope to produce. There is a concept in political science called manufactured consent, developed by philosophers Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman. Their argument, grounded in empirical study of media behavior, was that mass media in a market economy does not need to be ordered to serve elite interests. It does so structurally, automatically, because the people who own it and the people who fund it through advertising are themselves elites with aligned interests. The filter is invisible because it is systemic. 40 years later, that theory has not just been confirmed. It has been upgraded. Because what Chomsky and Herman described was a world of passive editorial bias, stories that were underplayed, perspectives that were marginalized. What we have now is an active, technological system of narrative construction, operating at a speed and scale that no previous era of media power could have imagined. Here is what the research does not resolve, and what matters most as you sit with this. The existence of billionaire media power does not mean every piece of information is compromised. Strong journalists, independent outlets, and academic institutions produce critical, courageous work every day, often in spite of the pressures around them. The system is not totalitarian. It is tendential. It pushes in certain directions without locking all others out. But there is a threshold. And researchers who study media consolidation, democratic backsliding, and the long-term health of information ecosystems are increasingly alarmed that we are approaching it. After World War II, the Allied forces placed strict restrictions on media concentration in occupied Germany and Japan, specifically because they had documented how concentrated media ownership had promoted anti-democratic political cultures. They recognized in the wreckage of those societies what narrative monopoly could do to a civilization. That lesson shaped an entire generation of democratic media policy. It is a lesson that is now largely forgotten. You live inside a story about the world. A story about what the economy is, what your government does, who deserves power, what is worth being afraid of, what is possible, and what is not. That story was not written by you. It was written, in significant part, by the structures of information you have been immersed in since birth. Those structures now sit, more than at any prior point in democratic history, in the hands of a very small number of extraordinarily wealthy individuals. They did not build this power through coercion. They built it through investment, in media, in foundations, in platforms, in the quiet, patient, decades-long funding of the institutions that produce the ideas that become the consensus that becomes the world you accept as given. Understanding this does not make you helpless, but it does change the first and most important question you can ask about any piece of information you receive. Not, is this true? But who benefits from me believing it? That question, asked consistently, is more powerful than any single article, platform or billionaire on Earth? And it is the one question no algorithm can answer for you.